Hi, everyone. Welcome to Masters of Automation. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Tatyana again. Tatyana, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you as well. Since the last time we spoke, there's been a big change, right? Like the industry moved. You also transitioned into a new company. Now you're starting your own startup called Wayfound. I love to kick things off like directly with what made you make this move, and what made you start with.
We'll start off by saying that one of my life goals was to never be a CEO. And the reason that was one of my life goals is because I don't particularly like to restrict or constrict myself. And, I feel that CEOs are a lot of times, too much in the public eye, everybody's looking at them in an organization. And I like attention only when I want the attention. And so I very much told everybody in my life that I never wanted to be a CEO. However, sometimes the universe has other plans for us. And I had been an advisor to an amazing venture studio called 24 and Up, founded by one of the co-founders of Pendo, Eric Bodick. And there was a project happening around essentially AI chatbots and how to build on Chat GPT. And as the developer and I were talking, I said, well, have you considered, kind of pivoting this into AI agents? And he's like, oh, I was thinking about that too. Let's really, but I didn't really have anybody to work with on it. Let's start, working on it together. So we kind of pivoted the product and the platform into AI agent. What everybody was talking about is orchestration then, but then we realized it's really not orchestration. It's more like managing intelligence. And one of the critical pieces that we understood was that people needed a new platform to really trust the intelligence that was emerging. So we started building out a platform. I went off and as an advisor to the studio, wrote a deck, an investor deck, sort of like a vision deck about where this was going in order to, help the company hire a CEO and raise money with this investor deck. And then the founder of the studio said, this is kind of really like your deck, Tatyana. I don't know if anyone can deliver it the way that you can. And he essentially talked me into becoming the CEO. He is very persuasive, but I also really took the time to say, okay, what else can I be doing with my life? And I really feel that I have a unique confluence of experiences around anthropology, understanding how cultural change actually happens, around organizational design and building new organizations, and around building SaaS, platforms, that it would be very hard for me to find, honestly, someone better than me to do this, because my goal was to find someone better than me to do this. But when I actually got real with myself, I had to admit that probably this is something that I should be doing. And it's really my calling, right? It's my passion to bring this type of platform that creates trust and intelligence, that creates an opportunity for leaders to really create workplaces where Homo sapiens can work with AI sapiens in really productive ways. That is my calling. And so I stepped into it a few months ago.
That's really interesting. So one follow-up question I have to that is, now you've been a CEO. What are some of the things part of that role that surprised you, that are different than how you expected it to be?
It's much better than I expected. Let me just bring up the fact that it's much better than I expected, because a little background on me, I've worked for a lot of CEOs. I've also been on boards where we've had issues with the CEO and there's been a CEO transition. Let's just put it that way. And so I never thought it was a fun job, frankly. Like, I always was like, thank God I'm not in that role. That seems like really crappy. Like, I was like, you could not pay me enough money to do what these people are doing. But again, I wasn't passionate. I didn't have the passion and the drive to bring those products into existence and into being in the way that I have the passion and drive to do this. And I find it really fulfilling to be the person who, I mean, I have an amazing team, and they're all doing their own things and they have amazing ideas, but it's just so fulfilling to be able to bring people together to get to a similar goal, right? As a team and as a community, and then bring investors and customers along and tell that story, right? At the end of the day, I love telling the story of the future that we're building. And that to me, as the CEO role, is probably the biggest one for a startup CEO. And I love it.
And a lot of the CEOs that I spoke to mentioned that because they have the conviction and vision in the product, as well as where the direction that the company can go to, that makes them convince the others to believe in the same vision. So when you were starting from the venture studio to more of an AI company, within that transition, what gave you the conviction and focus to believe that I will go ahead and build the next AI agent platform for everyone? And like, what was that trigger for you as a person that, okay, the world needs this and I want to do it?
Well, the trigger for me was that I didn't see, and I still don't see anyone building what we're building, because we are creating a platform for companies to really work with AI agents as intelligences, not as pieces of old-fashioned software. Remember, there's no Oracle database that's sitting behind these things, right? That they're retrieving from. Now, they could be using an Oracle database, right, to get some information to help, with a particular process. But I felt that everybody else in this game did not have the anthropology or the organizational design experience that I had. And so for me, that perspective to actually bring about something from the perspective of we are humans in organizations that we've created to achieve goals. How do we actually create AI systems, right, that empower us to work together with these new sapiens, right? Like these new intelligences, right? They're not pieces of software. This is the thing that this is why people get so frustrated with them. They expect it to act deterministically, just like a piece of software, just like a database. It's not. It's just like a smart intern coming out of a top university, but who really needs a lot of onboarding, training, management, supervision, feedback in order to get better. And once people get that, once they wrap their heads around that's what AI agents really are, they really are interns. They're not pieces of software. That's where we have real evolution and real transformation and real value add. And I really didn't see anyone else talking about it this way. Like, we own the patents to the first AI agent management platform, AI agent control layers, because again, nobody else was thinking about it the way that we were thinking about it. And again, I didn't see anyone who was trying to bring this about the same way that we are. And so that's why I felt like I have to do this. I have to do this. And honestly, it's really great because one investor said to me, he's like, wait a second, aren't you just building something that's really obvious? And I said, yes, we are. Apparently nobody else is trying to build this obvious thing. I mean, it's just how you would manage an intern. It's exactly that. And we're just building the platform for it to make them effective. And they're like, well, this is really obvious. And yes, but nobody else is doing it. So here we
Yeah, I
are.
feel like in one of the previous episodes, I got the opportunity to speak to Joy Mountford, and then she was saying that like finding things that are simple is actually the hardest thing to do. Like and I think it's like one of those situations that it takes experience, understanding of companies to be able to see that kind of just a simple insight that everyone has been looking for. So to tie to that point, how do you see like customers adopting it? Right, like from their perspective as they engage with this intern that over time get smarter, work with other interns that are specialized in certain tasks and whatnot. How do you see that work?
Yeah, it's interesting. We right now, all of our customers are using Wayfound to build new custom or personalized customer experiences. A lot of it is because we're working with product leaders, frankly. We're not seeing a lot of like labor reduction use cases on Wayfound. You can certainly build those on Wayfound, but what people are really inspired by is they see like our website, which is really just an agent, right? And you get a much better experience. Asking your questions, getting the responses, as opposed to having to like or talk to a sales rep, right? In order to get those specific questions answered. We also have custom onboarding experiences. Several of our customers are reducing the time to value of getting new customers onboarded by using these personalized, customized agents. We have a customer who's kind of revamping their whole kind of product experience, right? To have it be delivered through smart, customized, personalized agents so that the products, their main products now will not be just the same thing off the shelf for every customer. It'll be customized, based on like the UI, and the experience will be customized by the agent and then delivered in a more kind of personalized way. So when people really see the platform, they immediately go from, oh, how do I save time from, like searching documents, which you can do, by the way, you can do that with Wayfound. But like people immediately go from those use cases to like, I get it now. I can build something for my customer that like that we weren't able to build before, because this agent can call that agent and get a personalized and customized expert answer and then deliver that to the customer. Or we also have multimodal support. So like, oh, we could like deliver exactly the right chart or exactly the right graph or exactly the right image at the right time for the customer experience. Mostly what we're getting, and again, I think product leaders are getting really inspired by what they can do and the types of new products they can build, because it's a no code platform, more or less. We still need developers to hook up all the tools and the APIs and things like that usually, but once you have those hooked up, the product managers can configure, right, how the agents work. So I think a lot of people are really inspired to build new things. So that's how
And
customers.
how does the transparency work? So like from a customer's standpoint, when they have like 2 to 3 agents, maybe specialized on, let's say I have my product analyst like getting all the logs from the customers and their interactions, and I have my product manager trying to figure out the future pipeline, what is new, and then in the middle I have just like customer feedback, people being upset about it. So like those agents, do they speak together? And then as an enterprise, do I have the transparency and visibility into the conversation track? What happened? How did they go from reasoning to decision? I think seeing that will be really powerful for all of the customers, and I would love to see like how you approached it.
Well, perfect. So yes. So imagine, again, AI agents are interns. So imagine you have an intern, right, that's managing the roadmap, and they're like, helping the product team like figure out what the roadmap is going to be, and they're holding on to it and answering questions about it. And then you have another intern that's manning the customer service calls and writing the transcripts for all the customer service calls, right? And they have all that information. If you were a manager, what would you do to get those two interns to basically to make sure that the customer service feedback is getting to the product roadmap? Like, what would you do?
I would communicate it. I'll
Well,
plan.
but how would you get, like, you would call a meeting, right? You would create a
Yes, yeah.
meeting.
I'll create a meeting. Yeah.
You would create a meeting and you would invite these two interns into the meeting, and you would create an agenda as the manager to say, look, I want the customer service, like you, the person who knows all about the customer service feedback. Can you please look at the roadmap and tell me which items are aligned with what customers are really frustrated about and which ones aren't, right? That is exactly what you can do in Wayfound. We have something called meetings, right? And in a meeting, you put two or more agents. Actually, you can have a meeting with one agent. You can have a one-on-one, right? With one agent and ask them about more detailed questions about their own context. But you can put multiple agents, as many as you want, into a meeting. And then you create an agenda and a goal for the meeting. And then you run the meeting, and it creates a shared context. Remember, you're putting these interns into a shared context. And then from that shared context, that also, by the way, the shared context has the identities of the agents that are also bringing in the content, right? So it's
So then
not
I can bring a Plato as my intern, and then can I bring also like to bring different perspectives in as well, like setting personalities off, for example. Yeah.
that is a set when you build the agent, right? So yes,
Yes. Yeah.
if when you, but remember all of that also context comes in, right? And it's like these two interns are really communicating with each other and answering the agenda items together as best as they can. And the output is the answers to your agenda items from the shared context. In terms of, so everything is transparent, right, to the human, right? Because the human is calling the meeting and running the meeting. And then there's a follow-up discussion where you're like, wait a second, how did they come up with this answer? You can say, hey, how did you come up with this answer? And they will, again, answer it. So it's exactly like holding a meeting between your employees. Exactly like it. You're creating the shared context. You have follow-up discussion. You can ask follow-up questions, and then you can create, the next step, which we're building, is creating next steps, right? Like follow-up action items. So if you have action items that come out of it, then you can assign those action items, right, to the agents, or you can assign it to the manager. You can say, hey, manager, now we need some global directives. I need you to put this agent on a PIP, right, at a performance improvement plan, to try to get their performance to be a little bit better because I didn't like what they're doing. You can have all these kinds of follow-up actions afterwards, after the meeting.
That's really cool, actually, like putting an agent into a performance improvement plan based on the next step. So that plan, in a way, does the reinforcement learning of improving their performance over time, and making sure they're more active and more engaged in the meetings.
Yeah, we already basically have that. So we have two types of learning and feedback loops inside Wayfound. So the first one is self-reflection. So every agent, every night, runs a job where it basically reflects on how well did it perform, right? Given its whole history, but including the history of that day. And then it provides suggested directives for the human operator, as well as more information that's required. So basically it says, hey, these are things I didn't do well. I actually think I should have these directives added to my, to my prompts, essentially, right? Please add these directives because I think this would help me improve my performance, right, in terms of accomplishing the goals that I'm supposed to accomplish. And then it also says, hey, I couldn't answer these questions, or I couldn't do these things that users wanted me to do. Can you please give me either access to this type of tool or give me more information on these topics? So we have that kind of self-reflection. Then we have the manager sort of, analysis, right? We call it the manager assessment. It's a self-assessment and then a manager assessment. So the manager assessment then looks across the agents, and it basically has a leaderboard, right? These are the top performing agents based on the manager's opinion, judgment, right? So the manager also every day looks at what is the performance of the agent team that's under it, and says, what are my top performing agents? What are my worst performing agents, stack ranks them in terms of the normal metrics that you would expect, like usage, right? Conversations with other users, number of actions performed, those types of things. You have all of that transparency. But then if you go into like one of the lower performing agents, you click on one of them, again, you can have a conversation with the manager, say, what's going on, right? Like, why do you think this agent is not performing well? Why are you ranking it so low? And then it's like, are there any directives, right, that should be included to make it perform better? The next step is to say, then please add these directives to the agent and tell me next week whether the performance has improved and by how much. That's essentially a performance improvement plan.
I love the simplicity in how it's structured, and it made me think about a lot of the enablement side of it, like enabling a customer, especially in enterprise, to your original point of the organizational behavior. Because especially in some of those meetings, as they're assessing maybe the product roadmap, or maybe assessing like different parts of the organization to make decisions on top of, setting up that meeting to encompass different perspectives or different points of views, because then agents may not be complementary all the time to their ideas, but maybe sometimes argumentative to be able to keep bounds off different views. How do you
We haven't seen that yet. So agents seem to not really have egos or be worried about losing their jobs when they go into these meetings. So if you actually, like, I've been in a lot of meetings where customer service or sales was giving feedback on roadmaps, and people get really defensive, right? And then there's a lot of blaming afterwards. The product team didn't listen to us. The customer service team doesn't know what they're talking about, like that kind of stuff. The agents don't do that, right? They don't have egos. They're not worried about losing their jobs. They're not worried about not getting their next promotion. So you get pretty good results, actually. You don't have that type of you don't have the emotional context. You just have the intellectual context right now when you put agents into a meeting.
And I think that's interesting, because my point was from the configuration standpoint, configuring two agents that try to solve a single problem, but approach it two different perspectives to collaborate on it. And then that will bounce off those counter arguments and then maybe the blind spots that they could be missing.
I'm gonna have to think about that. Thank you. That's an interesting thing about so what we do have right now when we have workflows, what we can do is that the way to manage complex multi-step workflows, the best way to do it and reduce hallucinations is to have very tightly, narrowly defined agents that are doing no more than 4 steps of the workflow at a time and then passing it off to others. Now you could actually have, and then in between the handoff, you can have the manager actually assess the work and either accept it or not, like accept it, like approve. It's like an approval step, right? You can actually have the manager approve or not approve. And if it doesn't approve, it sends it back to the agent to iterate and create and redo the work. But you could actually have multiple agents working in parallel. And then, and we don't have this yet, but we could actually have multiple agents working in parallel, right? And then the manager could choose the best, right? The best approach, or the human operator, right? In the approval step could choose the best approach before the work is actually completed. We could do that. We haven't thought about it, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that could be something interesting. And I think to like starting from there, right? Like I think the agents, there's the approach of going through more process automation route of like the enterprise works at a certain process and a task, and then we execute those tasks. And some companies are robotic, and then it becomes a stitch on a wound, right? Like, and over time the wound grows because the problem didn't really get solved. So one thing that I've been hearing a lot is that Actually, the instead of approaching it as like here is a process and here's an enterprise that executes on it, how can we rethink the entire workflow and the engagement of people within the company? And I think what the way you are approaching to that problem resonates really well with that approach. And I'm thinking that just from the customer's standpoint, what will be the certain steps to enable them, right? Like as they are adopting it, maybe the product leaders or like different, let's say CFO's office want to adopt it for financials or adopt it from different perspectives. What would be from their perspective, they should change their thinking. Like they are still thinking robotic, right? Like, but they should start to think a little bit more creative. Like
Right.
what do you think about that?
You said exactly the right word, robotic. So most internal, like one of most internal applications of AI agents right now is basically just RPA. You've defined a workflow and you want a certain set of steps to be completed with the bots inputting certain pieces of information. And essentially you're just trying to like take the RPA process and put in an LLM, but then the LLMs don't, again, they're not drawing from a database, so they don't exactly input the exact things that you want. I mean, remember, they're interns, right? So they might get the inputs wrong sometimes. And this is why I actually think improving those processes is probably the wrong place to start for most companies, because they put in so much time and effort into optimizing the current workflows that they have. And it's really hard to rip something out of that workflow, even a small piece of it, and introduce uncertainty into the process. Because remember, these are interns. They're really smart interns. They can do really creative, amazing things. But if you need them to write the exact same words in the same exact form field, if you need them to do data entry, they're going to get it wrong a lot more than just like an RPA system. So in terms of enabling customers, and I think this is why most of our customers are actually building new customer experiences that create really amazing value, as opposed to trying to retrofit existing complex workflows that they've optimized with RPA. Now, we will get there, right? Like definitely AI agents will be able to do that. But right now it's too hard and people are spending a lot of time and money and being disappointed because they don't understand that this is not just a software system that is deterministic every single time, right? It's a really smart intern that create amazing new value and new experiences for your customers or your employees if you let them and if you don't constrain them too much. And so the way that we enable our customers is that if there's a process, if there's a complex process that is currently working for you, why change it,
Why do
right?
you change it, right? Yeah.
Why do you
It
like,
doesn't need
oh,
the additional AI just to be cool.
yeah, and they're like, oh, well, we can save, money later on, and I'm like, okay, or you can create a better top line right now, right? Like, which one would you like to focus on, right? I actually think so. Here's like everybody has seen the chart of how quickly ChatGPT got adopted, right? It was like the fastest adopted, consumer software experience ever in the history of planet Earth. Okay. Why are companies not taking that learning and saying, hey, there's something people find really valuable in the ChatGPT experience? How can we take that insight and get that kind of upswing in our adoption or upswing in our customer satisfaction, right, by using this technology? Like it's really weird to me that what people are actually excited about is the fact that they have seen that ChatGPT creates amazing experiences for the end customers, and yet they're not building products for end customers. They're trying to like automate away their employees in some way. Like
That's very interesting. That's
it's
very
not
interesting.
data driven. It's not data driven. The data driven approach would be to say, oh my God, look at this massive adoption of this new UI paradigm. How do we drive our adoption with our customers with this insight?
Yeah, and I think they have the lack of, and then I think this happens, and this ties to my next question really well, because all of the enterprises and all of the teams at enterprises are there to execute than to innovate, and that kind of results in more of a short-term thinking, and in a way, then the incumbents, like a new startup comes that maybe is doing a very niche, very specialized way of automating or replacing it with AI, and it can completely blow the incumbent away. So my question is this one I think is, if you think about the long-term vision of Wayfound, right? Like maybe the interns over time with the foundation models getting better, fine-tuning gets better, specialized AI gets better. They're going to go from an intern to senior to manager to maybe a director level of intelligence and execution power.
To the
So
board,
like
to the
to
board.
to the board as well. Yeah, exactly. So at that level of scale, there are two parts. One is, at that stage, how does an enterprise that's 10,000 employees stay innovative and stay lean? And do you see in opposing to that, startups coming in, 2 employees, 3 employees, but 200 agents, focusing on certain tasks, then to dethrone those incumbents? How do you see that play out?
No incumbents ever get dethroned because a startup is more efficient. Incumbents get dethroned because startups create better customer experiences. If you are not losing your customers, it doesn't matter if somebody is more efficient than you. If you are continuing to win, this is the other thing. If you are continuing to win customers because you are creating great customer experience, it literally does not matter how efficient you are or how efficient your competitors are. Efficiency is not why people win. Nobody wins based on efficiency. Now, you might win because of being a lower cost, and efficiency might be one of the factors in being a lower cost service. But nobody buys something. Like, do you as a customer say, I'm going to buy Nikes instead of Reeboks, or the opposite, because Nike is a more efficient company?
Because they deliver faster. Like,
Well,
that
because
doesn't
they
happen.
deliver
Yeah.
faster, well, then you have to say that's what you're building. And if AI agents help you build that customer value, then that's the question. But the efficiency question is like, nobody's going to win based on efficiency. That's nonsense. People
What
just need
about
to start
customer
thinking about why.
experience?
People just start need to think about, why do I buy things? Do I buy things because Tesla is more efficient than Mercedes? Do I buy this thing versus that thing because this company is more efficient than that company? It's nonsense.
And what would your take be if that was purely customer experience? Because AI agents can really drive improved customer experience.
Yes.
So
So if you are building amazing customer experiences that are with AI agents, LLMs, anything else, and your customer and customers in the market choose you over an incumbent, yeah, that's going to make the incumbent lose. Now, the incumbent at that point might try to get more efficient to please their shareholders. Remember, efficiency is something that pleases shareholders, not customers. But that only lasts so long, right? Because there's only so much bottom line growth that you can squeeze when your top line is not growing or decreasing. The name of the game is always to increase the top line. In a business, if you want to run a successful business, your top line is really the thing that matters. Like, I learned this at Salesforce. Salesforce had an executive training program, and it was called Leading for Growth. And the top insight there was, at the end of the day, you've got to stay focused as an executive on the top line because that's the only way to make the bottom line work at the long term.
And I think that will take like a lot of enablement education and advising so that companies change their mindset on how to adopt an AI agent so that their thinking wouldn't be so much on bottom line, but more on top line and more customer experience driven metrics to measure their outcomes versus more efficiency focused KPIs instead. And in your perspective, what, like, based on the customers you're interacting with, of course, there are the ones that are already thinking
They get it.
ahead,
The customers
right?
who
They
want
get it, yeah.
Wayfound already get it, right? I
They
don't have to
already get
convince
it.
them of anything.
So from the ones who don't get it, right, like, or they get stuck in their approaches and then so much process focus, so much efficiency focused, what would be the one thing they should do to think differently?
I'm going to answer this slightly differently. If I were starting, so I was a consultant for the first half of my career. If I were starting a consulting firm right now, this is all I would talk about. I would talk about the fact that the reason why we're entering this trough of disillusionment with generative AI is because people started in the wrong place, right? They actually were not taking a data-driven approach to where generative AI really shines right now. Again, just look at that ChatGPT chart, the customer adoption of this amazing new UI, of this amazing new, product experience is the thing that excited everybody, right? And so I would be starting a consulting firm and talking all over the world about how to take that adoption curve and apply it to your products and to your company in order to win in this next era of transformation. The next era of transformation, we'll see a lot of incumbents lose, but they're not going to lose. Again, they're not going to lose because they're not efficient enough. They're going to lose because they're going to be native generative AI startups that are going to be creating incredible customer experiences with AI agents. And those are going to be dramatically better alternatives for customers than what they have without generative AI. And you can just look at the internet. Like, imagine if when the internet happened, everybody was focused on just making their companies more efficient with the internet, as opposed to building the Amazons of the world and building the Spotifys of the world and building like, who were the winners in the internet revolution when the world shifted to the internet? It's the companies that were thinking about how to create transformative customer experiences with this technology, not the companies that were, trying to become a little bit more efficient with the internet by taking away memo writing and replacing it with emails. I mean, again, it's as if we're entering the next internet age and everybody is focusing on how to implement email communication as opposed to memo and phone call communications in their companies as the way to win. Like what? So
yeah, why would you do that?
Why would you do that? It's nonsense. Just look at history. Look at history, right? The companies that won in the 1990s were the ones that were creating the great customer experiences, not the ones that were focused on automating their internal workflows with the internet. Later on, once people figured that out, then people started to say, okay, now how do we automate some of our internal workflows with the internet? But again, nobody won because they did that. Blockbuster could have automated the crap out of their, out of their internal operations. You think Blockbuster would have won versus Netflix?
Yeah, that's a little lost story.
No, but I mean, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if I'm sure Blockbuster did, right? They automated a lot of things,
They did.
right? On their internal operations with the internet.
Yeah,
Right.
but they didn't change the experience.
They use the internet for inventory management. They use the internet for, better, basically getting you your whatever Blockbuster membership updates and things like that. They did a lot of that back end automation. Did it matter?
I think that efficiency at the end of the day made them forget what the customers really want or how that customer experience evolved to become, and which Netflix came and then serve a completely different way to engage. And that ties actually really well to the question that the previous guest would like to ask you. So I have this a new format. I ask every guest to ask a question to the next guest. So the question was, as companies think about customer experience, and if you think about the way foundation models present themselves, so like the chatbot interface, and the way a customer adopts it, how does the user interface design would evolve from more of a chat kind of approach to another way to interact with the computers? Maybe there's more of an imaginative thinking that what do you think it's become in the future, as well as more of maybe how ChatGPT and clouds take on it. ChatGPT is more conversational. Cloud has this new artifacts feature come out that maybe render different applications people are building or rendering that code. What is your take on this? What do you think about it? And then given experience in the past in Salesforce, Amazon,
Mhm.
I would love to think about I would love to hear how do you see that UI interface change over time?
Technology has always been able to do a lot of cool things. 2 years ago, if we were talking about this, we would say, how is the metaverse going to change app experience? And I would have said, I don't think it's going to change it very much at all. I think it's a shitty experience, right? It's like not something like who wants to wear a heavy thing on their head to interact with an application? Like, do you want that? Like, who wants that? Nobody wants that, right? So here's the thing, human culture has evolved in many ways. And if you believe in evolution, the way that humans interact with each other is how we would want to interact with other intelligences. So do we interact with each other? Do we like to interact with each other through interpretive dance? No. We like to interact with each other through verbal communication primarily. And yes, we like to talk to each other. There's going to be some places where voice is an interesting modality to get input from from, as you look like a crazy person if you're talking to your phone in public, right? And there's nobody else at the end of the line. Like, it's like it's just not you can do anything, all that stuff, right? But it drives people crazy when Siri turns on by herself, because it's not anything that anybody really wants unless they're driving, right? Or something like that. So I actually think that what we're going to see in terms of a UI shift is that it is crazy to me that websites require users to find the menu item and the button and then scroll down to the thing to try to find the information that they want. That's not how anybody wants to interact with anything, right? They want to come in and they want to do the ChatGPT thing, which is like, tell me about your company. Tell me about what you do. I have this type of company. What can you do for me? I have this problem. What can your company do for me? I actually think the chat interface, like the actual human type of interaction, is exactly where people are going to be going. So if you go to wayfound.ai, like we're trying to tell people, like we still have to build the normal website for, frankly, Google SEO purposes, but the better experience is just to say, like, we have starter prompts too. So if you don't know what to ask, we, give you something where you can just with one click ask, get the conversation started. But you want to actually, you don't like, why do websites require us to scroll and click and find the button and find the menu option to find the information that we want? No, I'm here, right? Like it's like you're walking into a store. When you walk into a store, the greeter doesn't come to you and like throw the new merchandise in your face, right? She doesn't do that, right? She says, "Can I help you find something?"
Yeah.
Right? And you say yes or no. Yes, yes, I'm looking for this thing, and then she walks you to that thing and gets you the thing that you want as quickly as possible. Or you say, "No, I'm just browsing," in which case she says, "Okay, let me point you in the direction of all the things that you can find here." That's how humans like to interact. Websites are shitty. And the reason websites are shitty is because they're built more for Google to SEO, right, than they are for customers to actually have good experiences, right?
That was fantastic. Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think well, like one thing in the beginning of the episode you mentioned was also the sales side of it as well, because like when I opened Wayfound, like I didn't see a lot of like sales and ads like trying to sell me something, but it was more for me to find answers to. I really like that experience, and I think then over time we will see maybe the the applications or the chats be the interface between us and the internet, right, more and more over time, so that finding information what we want out of a website is just easier.
Yeah, we've been
And
talking about conversation. I mean, designers have been talking about conversational UI for over a decade. And there's never been a good experience to really bring conversational UI to life. Now there is, but again, our workflows are so optimized for, like, if you go to another, like, chat, like a traditional chatbot on a website, the first thing will be like, what is your email? Give me your email. Give me your email.
yes.
It's like, I want to ask you a question. Like, give me your email. Give me your email. Give me your email. And you're just like, F you, I'm leaving,
Yeah,
right?
just close the tab. Yeah.
You're walking into a store. A website is a virtual storefront. Imagine if the greeter was like, give me your email. Give me your email. Buy this, buy this, buy this. Let me show you this. Let me show you that. Like, that's literally what most B2B websites are. It's like the greeter shows up and yells at you, give me your email, give me your email, give me your email. It's a terrible experience. Why would, like, you would walk out of that store?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to your customers? Why?
And I think it's just purely a SEO driven design that and websites copying each other to be standardized, and they follow their own standard, right?
Yeah. And I mean, again, we still had to build that standard SaaS website behind the scenes for Google. But we know that customers, oh, Google wants it. So we built it for Google.
Yeah, that is very true. So I have one question to you. So for you, if you were to ask one question to the next guest, what would it be? What are you curious about these days?
If you were 13 years old right now and you were looking about how the world is changing, would you be optimistic or pessimistic? And if you were to be optimistic, what would you be studying? And when people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say? And by the way, all of us are 13-year-olds right now, because I just turned 50, literally a few days ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I still have at least 50 years ahead of me. So if I think about the fact that I do have to, like, the question of what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up is relevant to all of us, because the world is going to be so incredibly different 20 years from now. And I'm still going to be working 20 years from now. For sure, I'm still going to be working 20 years from now. So what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to be 20 years from now? So for your guest, what do they want to be 20 years from now? And if they were a 13-year-old right now, what would they want to be 20 years when they grow up?
I love that question. I love that question. It is deep in the sense of, right, like there's the timelessness, right, like of what we do, what we love to do, and there's also the macro conditions of like people being pessimistic and optimistic based on the events that happen. It always goes back to the times of like in different snippets of time. If they were to ask that question, I think this will be my answer, but I think in each time,
what would be your answer? What would be your answer?
I think in each, like if we go back in time and think about like the bad times, right, like World War II, World War One, and when things were grave, and ask the people like, are you optimistic about future? I think it's the human nature to find a path outside, to not to fall into despair. So I would still be hopeful that things will get better, right? Things will get better in some sort of way.
There's a saying in Russian. There's a saying in Russian I want to tell you about.
Yes, please do.
When you think you've hit rock bottom, somebody knocks from below.
And there's always a worst of every situation.
You think it's reality for me, but there's always something worse.
That's so true. Well, thank you very much, Tatyana. It was a pleasure to have you again on the episode, and I hope we will meet again, maybe for round 3 as well.
I love that.
Very exciting things are ahead. Very excited about what you're building, and I think a lot of the customers and enterprises, this is what they need. So
Yeah.
I'm
And I would
I'm
like to
excited about
offer
it.
to your listeners, 1 month free of the full Wayfound platform. If they want to just go to wayfound.ai, chat with our agent, say, I want, Alp told me I could get a free 1 month, access to Wayfound, and we will get your listeners hooked up.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Tatyana.
All right. Thank you.